I'm John Hurley, the chair of the St. Catherine's Finance Ministry. There's a couple of other members of the Finance Ministry here. If you'd stand up to be recognized, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. We are our commitment is to get you out of here in time for the kickoff of the Bills game, knowing that that's almost as important as St. Catherine's finances. Welcome to our annual meeting. This is a meeting that's required by the diocese. It's not an emergency or a crisis. It's what we do every year to bring you up to speed on where we are. We will be reporting on the year ended in June and look ahead to the current year. This will be an overview, not a line-by-line item detail of the budgets. It'll be an opportunity to question us today, and if you're not able to do so today, any weekend or any time you see us, Dan is always available by phone or email as well to answer any questions. As Father Rob mentioned, Dan will be providing some details in his overview in a few minutes. I'd like to share a couple of thoughts before we begin. As we sit here at the end of October in 2025, the parish of St. Catherine's is in good shape. Our savings are rebuilding. We met our CMA goals for the last couple of years, and we're off to a great start, which Dan will show you in a few minutes. We have robust programs for parishioners of every age, and I think the good news for all of us is that as of an email that Dan shared with me on Friday, all of the controversy and litigation surrounding the bankruptcy has been successfully concluded. So as painful a period of our church as that was, it is now behind us. Going forward, both the finance ministries at Transfiguration and St. Catherine's are committed to ending what seems to be our annual emergency need for increased giving. Parishioners have responded all the time, and we are grateful for that, but that's not a sustainable path forward. To try to bring that to an end, we are engaging in a 5-year planning process. Certainly, none of us can predict the future. Who of us planning in 2019 would have said, I think there's going to be a global pandemic next year that's going to just disrupt the entire world and create havoc all over the place. The potential for negative things doesn't negate the need to plan, because the folks who don't plan are always surprised when the next day comes around. And we have an obligation as a finance ministries, a fiduciary responsibility to every member of the parish to be good stewards of their stewardship. And a part of that means we need to have a much longer range horizon so that when things like COVID and other events occur, we're prepared to be able to know where we need to make adjustments. And the other thing is, we are not going to cost cut our way to success. No thriving, living organization can do that. We need to grow more parishioners, and that is where all of us can be a part of making that happen. Events like the annual Schnackies Players events and next week's concert event with Sarah Hart are opportunities for us to engage new people to the St. Catherine's experience. And we need to make sure that we're cognizant of that. even if it's just inviting someone for a cup of coffee after Mass. Before turning over to Dan, I want to just express my thanks for your continued generosity and support. And I want to thank you for your comments and suggestions as to how we can do more with less and grow more with enthusiasm. Dan?
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. All right, so I just want to start out by giving you a quick snapshot of our finances. So this is the actual numbers from last fiscal year, which I'll remind you runs July through June. So this would be at the end of June, end of this past June. And let me go back here. So you'll notice here that 54% of our budget is spent on personnel. Now these next two categories here, $83,000 and $51,000, that's our school subsidy and our insurance, are set by the diocese. And then this figure here represents our facilities. 8% on maintenance and repairs, 3% on utilities, and then the rest really isn't a lot. So I mean, 70+% of our budget is on 4 major items. And this is a very typical pie chart, not just for us, but Transfigs looks almost identical and probably pretty much the same across the diocese. So the sheets that we handed out, and if you're online, if you want more detail, feel free to reach out. But we just took a quick snapshot of last year. So this is the actual numbers here. These were the budgeted numbers. This was the variance, and then we'll talk a little bit about this year's budget. So notice here we had a $28,000 surplus this past year, budgeted for $4,000. So you could say performed better than expected. But a big reason for that is because of this line here. There was a couple of staff vacancies that contributed to us being under budget in our expenses and having an overall surplus. And then when you look at the offerings, we were actually $33,000 under budget. Now in reality, if you look back, we probably over budgeted. And it wasn't an arbitrary number. We weren't just saying, oh, well, let's fill a gap. We were going off of 2 or 3 years of history in which we were rising. In retrospect, I think what probably happened is we hit the COVID rebound ceiling at some point last year. And that's why we came in under budget. So overall, this isn't bad, right? This is good for a single year. And then this is this year's budget. We did actually budget a little bit higher on the collections, which is why we also talked about, was it a month and a half ago? I think, John, you spoke about increased giving. When you factor in other things like our investment account, and then our capital expenses, these were some work to the steeple was painted, some parking lot lights, and mostly just repairs to our HVAC systems and things like that. Then our total bottom line was a $36,000 surplus. So again, overall, that's a good thing. But again, the key takeaways from this is even though we had a surplus, we weren't just under budget, we actually did decrease in offerings. And like I said, the budgeting thing, maybe that's because we overshot, but I think this is really important here. For 2 or 3 years we were going up, and then we didn't just level out, we actually went down a little bit. And the other key takeaway to all this is every year our expenses are rising. And, let's use the example, there's maybe 30 of us in this room right now, but let's say it's full at, 600 people. The lights, the heat, the maintenance, doesn't matter how many people are in the room. All of our buildings and facilities are overhead costs that are not, for the most part, not affected by the amount of activity or people here. So this is our snapshot of our balance sheet. This was a year ago. This was this past year. You'll notice that our total net assets did increase by 10%. So that's positive, definitely positive. Our total unrestricted grew by 32%. Now you'll notice this huge number here. Don't be alarmed by that. We switched the way we did some accounting. We were doing a cash basis essentially on our expenses. We switched to accrual. That just means that it's just an accounting thing. This number won't look like that next year. And we're typically now we're always going to have some payables on our balance sheet. It doesn't mean we have more debt or anything like that. But our net assets did grow by 10%. And that's, you can attribute that to having a surplus 2 years in a row, because we've really tightened up, right? And the ERTC money was yes, it was part of last year as well. That's the employee retention tax credit, which is a one-time thing, so that helped. Okay, but so some of you might still be asking, like, okay, Dan, these are good signs, but, what's the bottom line? How are we doing? And I think generally that's what people want to know. Just tell us how we're doing. Well, let's look at some trends. So the blue line is regular offerings, and the orange line is total revenue. First of all, you'll notice they pretty much mirror each other almost exactly. And of all of our revenue, typically 90%, give or take, is from regular offerings. And the rest is things like fees for funerals or maybe faith formation, gifts and donations that come in for specific things, like a sound system, for example, maybe fundraising, the Schnacky play, the can and bottle drive. That's what that 10% is. This gray line is total expenses. So typically we're going to want to see this line lower than this line, meaning at the end of the year we will have a surplus. And generally they are. This year, I don't know, back in 18 we dipped. And then, 21 and 22 we were just about break even. These last 2 years we've had a surplus. But you can see the overall trend, it still has gone down from here to here. This dip, it came back up from COVID, but again, it's going slightly down. Another way to look at this is, what is our total assets? We really want to know, what is our total cash position? These are our net assets. And as of 2016, we were just shy of 600,000, and now we're shy of 400,000. Now remember, we gave 220,000 to the diocese a couple of years ago. So that explains that big difference, right? And we've been through some difficult decisions and tightening up on expenses and asking for increased giving. We are on the rise. Now, it is important to note, however, that some of that rise in this past year was from the employee retention tax credit, which is a one-time thing. But again, this is overall generally positive. And so for the first quarter of this year, things look really good. We're $32,000 over budget on collections. Total revenue, total expense, we're 10,000 under budget. So I like to say that we're better off by about 38,000 than where we had predicted. It's the first quarter though, keep that in mind. Things can change easily. And this is just if you've if you watch the monthly videos I do now, and the last one I explained that when we put the collections into the budget this year, we base it on historical data. The last few years, we were just doing an average, monthly average, more or less. But this time we said, well, what does the trend look like? So we took 3 years of data, compiled it, we got an average, and then we used that average to enter the collections into the budget. So that when we say, you know, the budget for August was whatever, $20,000 in revenue, but we only brought in, you know, 10,000, we don't have to say something like, well, don't worry about it, we'll catch up, because we always get more in October, right? So when you see now in the bulletin that budgeted number, you know that that's pretty accurate. And you'll see there definitely is a trend here. And typically, we get a large jump in October. And that's because more and more people are giving annually through RMDs or QCDs. And not typically, but a lot of people do that in October. September was a huge jump, and I'd like to think that's in response to the request that John had made recently. Okay, Dan, but still, where are we at? How are we doing? So this is my opinion. Overall, we have a growing balance sheet. Our savings are being restored. We're paying all our bills on time, that's no problem. And we have some ability to respond to unexpected needs or small to mid-sized projects. So if a portion of the roof fell in and it cost us $30,000 or $40,000, we've got enough money to fix that. If the whole roof caved in and it cost us $250,000, it'd be a little bit different story, right? I don't think there's any chance that that's going to happen, but you see my point. So while those things I just mentioned are good and positive, and certainly we're better off than a lot of other churches in the diocese, you know, the downside, if you want to call that, expenses are rising, and you know, the offerings decreased a little bit last year. And as John mentioned, as a general rule, we don't want to cover our annual operating costs with our savings. If we have a deficit 1 year out of 3 or 4, it's okay. Or it averages out, that's okay. I can live with that. But if it happens year after year, that's a big red flag. And if we get to the point where every year we have to make cuts, guess what? This is where it comes from, right here, personnel. Because these are fixed, this is essentially fixed, and the rest doesn't add up to a lot. And the more we cut staff, the less we can do as a parish. Not to take away from what volunteers do. Don't mishear what I'm saying. But the day-to-day operations are severely affected when that happens. So the good news is, you know, I've been on this job just about 3 years now. And the last 3 years, every time I've worked on a budget, it's been pretty much a month before the new fiscal year began. And you know, last year, up at Transfig, for example, it was unfortunately kind of shocking when I looked at the numbers, right? Because every year there's increases. For example, health insurance, starting in January, the premiums are increasing by 20%. And every year there's a roughly 3% cost of living increase that comes from the diocese. We don't necessarily have to do that, but in this economy, we think that's pretty fair. So being able to sit down now, I'm already working on next year's budget, and we're not just looking at 1 year, we're looking at 5 years. And we're looking at giving and demographic trends, attendance. We're going to look more specifically at what each staff person does. Not to say that people aren't doing their jobs, but just what are the priorities and where do we put resources? And of course, looking more at our relationship with Transfiguration. So there's a handful of folks that are going to begin meeting in the next couple of weeks, and we'll then discuss more with the larger councils, and we'll go from there. As far as CMA, off to a great start, so thank you, everybody. And actually, let me start by saying thank you for all those that contributed last year. I think we've met our goal, is it 3 or 4 years in a row now? And that's fantastic. And so this surplus, 50% of that came back to us last year. And then if you look at this year's goal, it did go up to 117,000, but we are already at 61,000 pledged. This was as of Friday, compared to 26,000 last year. So we're about 52% of our goal, and really with about the same amount of donors. And there was a number of folks that gave early and actually gave a little bit more. But this is all great news, and thanks to Jen and Leo, Jen Yates and Leo McLaughlin, who've been heading that up. Questions? And let me remind you, the more challenging the question, the later you're going to get to watch that Bills game. I'm looking at you, Shar. Teresa.
I always wonder about attendance and whether it goes up or down every year. Do we have any kind of numbers that are consistent with, have we gained in our membership? Have we lost in our membership? Is it Transfig the same way? I mean, I just want to know, because we're down $9,000, is it the same amount of families, or is it a gain or loss of families? Do we know?
Jeff, give me one more. I'm trying to pull something up here. You got a second, Jeff? All right. I want to look up the email. I was looking for an email that was recently sent to me by Meg. Thank you. But and Meg, if you remember, maybe you'd like to share. But I asked Meg. She put together the last 5 years, and I believe that we're not really increasing. It's about steady, Teresa.
The peak was, I'm sorry, before that. I have a loud voice, so.
But Teresa, that's a great, and if you'll allow me, maybe what I'll do is I'll get some more data, and in my next monthly update, I can include that.
It just seems so important to make, what's the percentage of people, do you have any idea what that actually give and don't give? Is it an 80-20 like normal stuff? Is it 50-50?
Yeah, of our total registered, it's probably a third. And then,
that give.
Yeah, but keep in mind, a lot of those registered folks, they haven't been active in years for various reasons. And we did do that census recently, but that was primarily focused on the folks that are active. And it was great because it actually got us accurate information, because I can't tell you the number of times I've tried to call a parishioner and I call a phone number that doesn't exist anymore, or an email that no longer exists. So it was very successful in that regard. The next phase of it, if and when that comes, would be trying to, clean up the rolls, so to speak. But to be honest, it would be nice to know, but in terms of our assessments, it won't change anything, because then everybody's numbers would change somewhat the same. So, but yes, for us analyzing our own information here, it'll be good to know that. Shar, you had your hand up?
The only other thing, and I'm just throwing it out
Yeah.
there too, is you might know this answer, but I don't know what the online attendance is like and what the behaviors are for those attending online. So that's another interesting place to look further.
Yeah, good point.
I know we lost 3 staff members, Crawford and Vicky and Kathy. And I have seen somewhat how the gaps have been filled of getting the work done that those people did. But I'm still concerned, and sometimes I'm a little bit overwhelmed when I go to do something. For example, this is lemonade on the porch. You know, I do it to build community. You ask, how are we going to increase parishioners? Well, to me, that is a good way for us to strengthen our community. And sometimes I think we should do more. Like, one of the things is I see families coming for faith formation, and they have an hour of time. And I don't want to give myself another job, but it seems that we should make that hour comfortable. If they would like coffee or a little place to sit or something while they wait for their children, I feel, you know, having the young people in our parish should probably be one of our goals, because it's, you know, we're not getting any younger, and we really need to appeal to those people. So that was one of my comments, that I think we need to work on the younger families that are in our parish. And I also feel that, I hate to use the word burden, but sometimes when I have to have announcements in the bulletin or from the pulpit, it seems like I have to go through many hoops. I know Nancy Wall is an amazing person, but at the same time, I have to make sure I have my announcements in at a certain time and put certain things down. The structure that we experience, I don't think it's just me, but I've had people ask me, what do I have to do to get an announcement on? So, and who approves things like that? So it just, I think we're lacking some things, and some things have become a burden as we have lost people maybe, or I don't know what the reason is that we have so many hoops that we have to go through when we would like to do something. Amen.
Do you want me to comment? You know, as far as the communications part, if we didn't do, and there's always room for improvement, Shar, and I'd be happy to talk more afterwards. But with 2 churches and multiple staff and multiple volunteers and ministries throughout, it would be very, very challenging if we didn't have those types of procedures in place. So I know it's definitely changed from the way it used to be, where it was a little bit more personal in the past, but you know, just about every staff person is now shared between 2 or more churches. So if we didn't have those types of protocols in place, what would happen is a lot of things would fall through the cracks. Can we make improvements? Sure, and we can talk more about that.
I'd like to comment really quickly too, as we've had a big number of families coming in from either moving or from other parishes, or just coming back for the very first time at both parishes. Our confirmation youth ministry program, our faith formation program has increased so much that there is actually no more room here at St. Catherine's to host anything during religion class. We are using every room. We have 2 4th grade classes, 2 2nd grade classes. Every room is being used. The community center now has to be used. So with that, as much as we would love to have a place for families, parents, a lot of them use that time to go grocery shopping or other things. So I'm not saying that it's not a good idea. I would love it, but during those classes, we just don't have room this year. Also, Ann and I specifically asked Dan this year to speak to our families at our parent meetings for confirmation and for faith formation in person and at home about financial responsibility and what it means to be a part of the parish. Because we have heard in the past that it's the young families who are not giving or not giving as much. So we heard that, and we asked Dan to come and talk, and there was a lot of good understanding and knowledge that came from those meetings. So even though some people may not see stuff that's being done, I just wanted to put that out there that it is being done.
Hello. I'm wondering, our unrestricted funds and then our restricted funds are invested through the diocese, correct, Dan?
Correct, yes. Communis, through the Communis Fund, yep.
And that's fine. I'm wondering, over this past year, do we know what our yield was from those, what the diocese yield was on funds that they have? Are we getting, can you throw a percentage at it?
It's about 10%.
Is it?
Yep. I don't know what it was this year specifically. I'd have to look at that. But in general, it's been 10%.
Are they investing generally in a medium type of risk thing, or stocks and bonds, or do you know what they're doing?
I think
with
it's
that?
more stocks than anything.
Which is nice for the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's more heavily in the market. I know that.
Okay. And of course, they pay a fee just for that, for somebody. Have they been with the same firm for years to handle their investments?
Yeah, it's Alesco, I believe, right? Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wondering.
Sure.
Okay.
I found that email too with the attendance, so I'm not going to put it up because I've got some other things on the screen here that are confidential, but, oh, never mind. Okay, it worked. All right, so maybe not, you probably can't even see it. Anyways, so for St. Catherine in 2019, now this was only 26 weeks worth, but the average weekly attendance, Meg, right, was 473. And then COVID, closures, blah, 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 was 234, 265. In 2022, it was 294. It started climbing again. So 2023 was 359. 2024 was 397. And then this year thus far, it's 376. So it's based on just a 52-week average. So it's hard to say what this year will be because we haven't had Christmas and Easter yet. So, but it went from the last 2 years before that, from 294 to 359 to 397. So it was increasing. And Transfigs was a very similar pattern. In the last 3 or 4 years, 374, 464, 468, and thus far this year, 439. But we haven't had the big holidays to increase that average.
So, Dan, thank you. I actually stumbled on your monthly update online recently, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
2 questions, I guess. Can you remind us what's in the restricted funds, what that amount is made up of? And
Yep.
then following that, has there been any talk about doing another capital contribution fundraising effort? And do we have enough need to kick that off if it was needed?
Sure. So the restricted fund, let me see. Jeff, how do I get my screen back here? It's up there, but somebody, here, hold on, grab a sheet. Go back to your And also, it's on this, it's in this packet as well. So the Good Samaritan Fund is just over 15,000, and the Facilities Fund is about 200,000. Okay, yep. And I think as of like last week, our checking account was about 175. So I'm going to actually probably be moving more into our Communis Fund, so we can start, getting some growth on that as well. And then your second question was about a capital campaign. So I think a couple things is I wouldn't be surprised if the diocese launches a capital campaign that will incorporate each of the parishes as well. How that will work, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it's, hey, we need to raise X amount overall, and, of the amount that you raise, X percentage stays with you. I don't know. That's just guessing. But there likely will be something coming from the diocese, I would imagine, now that the bankruptcy is over. And then the second thought is that, as we sit down and look at our 5-year plan, we're going to look at that, right? I think, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but right now, our church, our buildings and facilities overall are in pretty good shape. I mean, praise God, Bob, Kathy, you guys have been great stewards of that. But we still want to plan for the future, right? If we're looking at 5-10 years down the road, we should be ideally setting money aside for new boilers and roofs and things like that. Jim?
How much is in our unrestricted account, which we call sometimes our savings account, but how much money's in there?
Yeah, so our total unrestricted right now, as of June, was about 210,000, and it's probably a bit higher than that now.
Okay. And it was zero as of...
Well, that includes our
couple years
checking
ago.
account. The number I just gave you includes the checking, right? So I'm going to keep our checking around somewhere between 75 to 100, then the rest will go into Communis. And we just moved over back to Communis. You guys remember how much it was recently? Within a month or so, I would say we're probably going to be back at about 150,000,
Okay.
give or take. So we're well on our way to being where we were in terms of our savings account.
And that Communis Fund is money we've put in over the last couple of years, since we went down to close to zero when the diocese
Yes,
took some.
correct,
Okay.
yes.
And that money has, in 25 words or less, tell us where that came. That's like money that we put into savings because we haven't needed to spend it.
Correct. It's by having a surplus at the end of the year for the last 2 years, and the employer retention tax credit. That was pretty significant. What was it, $80,000? Yeah. That's honestly, that's a huge part of it.
Right, okay.
But it's probably 50% of it, and the other 50% is having surpluses over these last 2 years.
You also, at that time when we were down close to zero, you made an effort to collect donations from people specifically to replenish
That's right.
that fund.
Yep.
Can you tell me just roughly how much that might have helped?
25 to 30,000.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. Good answer, Dan.
How many words was that? Was it 25 words?
Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you. All right. Yeah, thank you, Rob.